Hi everyone, welcome to our Talking Tuesdays. My name is Tanvi and welcome again. As you know that we are doing a series called Birth Wisdom, wherein we picked up 9 multiple intelligences which Professor Howard Gardner spoke about. And yes, we've covered quite a few. And today we are going to be talking about uh, mathematical intelligence. So let's see how that intelligence pans out during birth. So that is something we will be talking about today. So welcome. Hi Neha. Okay, so we're live and I'm just adding Divya to this conversation. And hey, hi Divya.
Hi, happy birthday, Tanvi.
Thank you.
I thought whether it was appropriate to say it, but I think it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I can't
And
miss our Talking Tuesdays, even if it is my birthday.
I know, I know, and that's so delightful. Okay, so where are we? Oh, Neha's here. Hi, Neha.
Yes. Thank you, Neha. So, yes. So, like I said, we are talking about multiple intelligences, which Howard Gardner spoke about. And today we'll be talking about mathematical intelligence and how, it pans out during birth. So, yes, let's try and understand that during our conversation today.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Birth wisdom through multiple intelligences, and we're going to talk about logical, mathematical. And interestingly, for a long time, that was the only intelligence that was ever tested, your IQ. And see that we have put it at number, I think, 6,
Yes.
because in our pursuit of this IQ or this logical or this thinking mind, we put away so much that we already had, which was feelings. And if you listen to the work of Dan Siegel, he talks about the whole brain child or the whole brain person, which means you're able to think through your feelings and you can feel through your thoughts and kind of integrate both of them. And we have a particular area in our head that allows us to move back and forth, but it is this connection across the corpus callosum between the hemispheres, which is, some people say, considered to be bringing whole brain, to be able to put a rationale break on high emotions. That's a whole brain philosophy. To be passionate while being logical, that's a whole brain philosophy. So you can look at it this way. And nothing can be more important at the time of birth is to be whole brained, because our experiences are shaping the baby's brain as well. So we've talked about rhythms, we've talked about body, we've talked about so much of input. And then this one will kind of saying, how do we make that input on a rational level? Whereas we have already explored through intrapersonal how this input affects us. So now on that feeling, if we want to have hand in hand going, titrating or moving through feeling into thinking, then taking the facts and then going saying how I feel and moving back and forth, it'll become a very rounded preparation or a very whole brain preparation for birth. So, we first started with saying understanding signs of well-being. And when we were talking about rhythms, we said that there is a rhythm to nature. So, while the sense of the rhythm, which is again a feeling philosophy or a feeling modality, tells us all is well, if we see signs that are not rhythmic, that might tell us we need help. So I'm still not saying complication, but understanding What are those rhythms of well-being? What is my expectation from nature? Or what will nature express as in birth? Versus what am I listening to? And if there is if there is a mismatch, then we can use our thinking brain to say what might be happening. And a very simple
So,
example
so
is,
this is true during pregnancy as well, not just
yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to give you an example from that. Say somebody says, I'm feeling a lot of pain on the right side, on my right side, on my hip. I have this shooting pain that goes down my right side. Now, if you look at it, if you don't look at it holistically, and just in that moment, this is a right side pain. But if I start to put logic, which could include biometrics or biomechanical systems, this is my pelvis. Here is, where am I feeling the pain? I'm feeling it starting from here, moving down my leg. What might be coming out of here? Maybe some nerves are. What might be pressing the nerves? Maybe an imbalance. Oh, maybe I should see a chiropractor and get my pelvis adjusted. That's logical thinking. That's sequential thinking. This leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and seeking that science, that practicality, that mechanics is that mathematical or logical or sequential, what is called intelligence. So that's one of them. In birth as well, if I have educated myself on a very cognitive level about how the baby moves through the pelvis, then for me to understand, okay, where in the pelvis is the baby and what might be getting in the way of it. And this preparation cannot just be the mother's. Maybe, she can have the partner and she discuss it, and we will come to our interpersonal relationships later. But today, just knowing how this works and then kind of looking at what is happening through the lens of that logical thinking might take us back to the cause and solution rather than get caught with saying, oh, this is what is happening right now. So let me talk about feelings here. As I come into relationship with myself, I become aware of my sensations and my feelings. And when these sensations are pain and very intense, or when the feelings are very negative and very buoyant, something happens in my nervous system, which is called the amygdala hijack, which means that my fear center starts to give a loud signal saying, help me, there's fear, and then everything else shuts down, including my thinking brain. But if I am able to say, oh, I'm sensing this, and can I ask for help? Or, can I understand what's happening? If I can take a pause at that time and have support around me who can remind me of this logical sequence actually brings it into a very narrow focus. This and then this and then this and then this. And when I say logical, this is not about, oh, I heard this and so said this. That's not logical. Now, when I hear a birth story as a preparation, so while someone tells me, oh, I was at 40 weeks and my doctor said that in waiting anytime after 40 weeks, the baby becomes too big. That's like a light bulb. Oh my God, what if my baby becomes too big? What will I go through? What will the baby go through? Pause, put your thinking cap on, or go into that part of modality of logical thinking. So, oh, really? Do babies become that big? Hold curiosity and look at research. And then you'll find that babies actually don't become big after 40 weeks. You can wait. And what is the normal window of waiting? And that's your next step of preparation. And say, oh, I can easily wait up to 42 weeks. Oh, great. And then what does the research say on it? Because I want to be sure that the decision I'm taking, as opposing to what the doctor or this my friend was saying, actually makes me feel safe. So then I can look at research, and decoding research is also logical, mathematical, because they're telling you numbers. So, that kind of preparation, knowing more. So you know more into your feelings and you know more in the thinking. And as they two come together, that's when you feel much more in control, much more confident about your choices, much more confident about your beliefs. So this is how you use your logical, mathematical intelligence. Unfortunately, people say, oh, I'm not going to make a decision because the doctor knows better. Because doctor has more IQ or education or more science background than I do. But that's not true. because anybody can use a logical approach. Everybody does use some part of that, saying, if I drive on the wrong side of the road, I will. What are my chances of having an accident?
Correct. I mean, I
That's a
think day to
logical
day also we kind of use this intelligence every now and then.
all the time.
Yeah.
If I don't lock my house and I leave it open, there is a possibility. And then you might look at the research of what is the possibility. If I have a apartment building and there's a guard, what is the now the possibility of losing something is from somebody inside the building, but because outside nobody can come, there's a guard at the gate. We use it all the time. We may not be able to do the IIT kind of questions, but our entire life is based on really simple logical decisions. It's too hot outside. You know how many times you make a decision to go to the market and say, no, it's really hot outside? You haven't gone out and felt the heat, but you say, no, it's really hot outside. Maybe I'll go after 2 hours. Or you might say, well, I know it's hot outside and it's the same condition, but I really need to get this ingredient because I have to get dinner ready. And you might go outside and then rationally you might take an umbrella. And if you don't, then when you get burned, then next time you remember your logical mind kicks in the next time. So it's not something that a very high IQ, you have to have a number of IQ so that you can use this. It's just common sense of linear sequential events. And it's very simple to understand. So in birth also, let's start with using our logical mathematical intelligence in terms of understanding maternity care. We're saying this care is better, this is not good, this, don't think of it like that. Think about logically that who are you going for your care? Is it a doctor? And if it is a doctor, is it a specialist? And if it is a specialist, what is their specialty? So let's start with that. A doctor's degree or an MBBS takes about 5.5 years. Correct me if I'm wrong, which would be about 4.5 to 5 years of studies and half year of internship or a year of internship. And after that, you'll probably get a role of a RMO or somebody who looks at the ward on a shift. And then you'd say, okay, yeah, that's not good enough. I need to do more. And then you do a specialization. So what is the specialization that your care provider has done? She's an OB/GYN. Her majority of training, which was 5 years of medical practice, and the GYN part is looking at pathology of the body, the whole body in general, and then the reproductive system. And then one part that she may choose to function in is OB. And OBs are also called in to do surgeries and medical practice when things don't go well in labor or it saves your life. So their skill, I must say, is that of a surgeon. And they like doing C-sections. They have practiced C-sections. They've learned new techniques. If you see, your doctor is always upgrading on what more can I do, hopefully appropriately. But if there's no need, how do I practice? So their logical way of thinking, which is also programming by their own education, is about what can go wrong and what can I do. And so here you are. So if you have a care provider who's focused on what they can do and what all may go wrong and is heavy on testing and constantly looking for disease, you are going to end up with some kind, if not more than some kind of intervention. That's just the quality of care. It's not that they are bad. They're just doing their job a little bit too much and too well. Or they're doing it with a person who doesn't really need it. So let's say logically, how many times would you go to a doctor or a hospital if you were well? And if you go for a doctor's visit, what would they test? They would test symptoms that might show that there is something wrong in the body. Is there a test in medical science that says you are well? And I'll tell you why. When you look at your report, if your values are within range, they are just typed. But if they are out of range, they are highlighted. So where is their focus? On disease.
Right.
And if you understand that logically, then your expectation from your doctor will become more realistic Your communication to your doctor will become more supportive or advocating of what you want. In contrast, if you logically feel that I will not get that care with this doctor, you might look at other options, and choosing options, pros and cons, is your logical, mathematical intelligence. And then, of course, there are other care providers. There are care providers. There was a time where GPs attended birth and they did it at home. There is a time where midwives attend birth. Now, I'm going to do the same analysis for midwives. So, midwifery practice can be in a hospital, it can be independent, can be collaborative. So, it's not like just because it's a midwife, it's a certain kind of care. You have to understand logically, break it down to say who's practicing, what is their scope of work, where do they practice, and you can have that conversation with your care provider. So you may find that there are midwives who work in hospitals who still follow a large part of hospital protocols, but it's a little bit different orientation to your health than doctors are. And then you will find midwives who run birth centers, and there is no medical treatment around them, or there are some who may choose to work with doctors. So remember, when we are talking about my choices, I should be consulted, I should feel safe, my beliefs, we must offer the same respect to our care providers. And therefore, instead of asking the doctor to change, we should change the doctor or change the care provider. And that works better for us because the control or the locus of control lies with us. And that's again, the way to evaluate what am I going to get as care becomes a preparation using your logical mathematical.
I
Uh,
remember this, yeah, even during the birth of my first son, my husband Manish was so particular about reading online and getting to know things, and that's when he pointed out to me that the government of India has only recommends only, I think, 2 or 3 scans,
yeah,
in the entire duration of your pregnancy.
that's right.
However, I mean, I must have gone through at least 6 or 7.
Yeah, yeah, and not questioning why. And maybe perhaps we don't want to use the why because it's a big figure of judgment. Why are you doing this? And then I start to defend myself. You could rephrase it. We are going to talk about our linguistic intelligence next week, but we're going to hold it for that. But, just as an example, to say, okay, what are we going to find with this test? Or what are we going to do with this test? So, we can ask these questions, but these questions are furthering our interest to evaluate
Yeah.
whether I need to do this or not. And, a lot of people say, how can I tell my doctor this? Or how but if you cannot tell your doctor that and you're sensing that this is not coherent with me, I don't feel cared for, I don't feel welcomed or looked after, you still have the choice to change that care. Doesn't have to be a fight. So it's a multi-pronged approach, which is why we said in the beginning that we use a lot of our intelligences together, or we can put them to use for our benefit in many different ways. And here we are with that. So looking at the practicality of your maternity care through the lens, a dispassionate, logical, rational point of view is a pause from your feelings to say, oh, this is what is available. And then you can go back to your feelings, which is intrapersonal, and say, how do I feel about it? Where in this system am I best served? And I do want to, kind of think about this a little bit more rationally, that it is not possible to get an ideal all the time. And this is, I think, one of the biggest preparations for parenting, saying that it'll never be ideal. An ideal would be if I pay attention only to the baby's need. That's ideal for the baby. If I pay attention only to the mother's need, that's ideal for the mother. But if I want to look at health for both of them together, understanding that they're humans and they have this capacity, I have to look at what works best for us. So likewise, you can say, and you can use the same pro and con conversation, saying, okay, I have a possibility of a midwife, but she's not in my town. I have a possibility of another kind of care in my mother's state or next to my mother's state, and I have another possibility of care in my state. And you can list down your pros and cons. For somebody moving to another state or another city to have birth might make sense more than giving birth in death, but for another, then it may not. So who are we to say what choices they've made? But at no point should a woman feel, I don't have any choice at all, right? And if she doesn't have any choice at all, she still has the choice to make most, advocate, find another care provider, have a conversation, build up what she does have to a capacity that it feels that, yes, I am looked after. So I refuse to believe that everybody is in a state of helplessness. And some of that, I mean, I want you to take a pause and use your logical brain to say, really? If the narrative around you saying, oh, the system is really bad, oh, nothing can happen. Yes, it is. There are flaws in the system, well, tremendous flaws in the system. But if we start to saying that all the time, our brain will cherry pick things that will tell us that the system is bad. It will stop us from solutions. So say, yes, the system is flawed. I'm really unhappy with my care. This doctor doesn't suit my purpose. Pause. That's feeling. What more can I look for? So let me do some research on my options. Are there options available near me? Are there options? And in the end, you go back to your feeling brain and say, okay, while I look at all the options, this is the one that works best for me. And always remember that it can change as you move on in pregnancy. What you might feel is a great option at 20 weeks may not be, you might feel much different when you are at 35 weeks. So that's also possible. If nothing else is possible, can I look for support that might buffer this experience for me? Even that is an option. If my brain is designed to look for options, if I use my mind to look for options, that's where will I go. It's sequential. This goes to this, goes to this to this. So if I say, okay, what might help me get through this? Can I get that buffer? So for example, let me give you a birth example. If I say that, uh, if I go to the hospital too early, no matter which hospital I go to, which doctor, they're going to do things to me. So I'd like to stay at home as long as possible, but I'm worried. What might help me stay at home a little bit longer? It could be a doula. It could be a family friend. It could be a friend who's also, so your friend might be doing medical science and she might be supporting you. Or can I talk to somebody? So don't think that there's helplessness all around you, because that helplessness is probably the worst environment for your baby's development. Think possibility. And when you're using two sides of your brain and teaching your child to move between feelings, thoughts, and all these different things, but you're moving through, you're not stuck and paralyzed and helpless. Think of what that experience means for the child's growth, both physically and mentally. So it's a really important pathway. It is still by many people considered the only pathway, logical. That's how IQ tests are done. I will not say that our education system is logical, mathematical. That's more rote learning. How quickly can I condition you to remember this? That's a
That's
whole
changing
different.
too.
Yeah, I know, and I know there are some wonderful ways of teaching children, but if you see the other ways of teaching children actually engage all their intelligences, whether it is touch, whether it's movement, whether it's music, whether it's visual, whether it's linguistic, it uses all their, and that is why they have such a coherent system. In fact, your logical mind can actually be enhanced when all the other inputs come and you have the capacity, you have an internal relationship to pause and say, oh, what does this mean to me? Like a curious, like a interested view rather than, oh my God, I can't handle this view. That's intrapersonal right there. So one other way of looking at, well, actually two I want to talk about before we close today. One is looking at research, because there's a lot being spoken about evidence-based research. So, when we are looking at numbers can be very deceptive. When I look at numbers in a reverse way, those percentages can be changed. So if so instead of talking about, you can talk about risks or you can talk about mitigating risks, and you can go both ways. But when we look at research, remember research is done in parameters that are controlled. And but every subtle nuance makes a difference. So you might find one research says that, epidurals have no effect at all because they didn't consider breastfeeding as being effective for them, but epidurals are perfectly safe and they have no side effects. Whereas another research, if we include outcomes of breastfeeding, bonding, the research may change.
Yeah.
So the ability to evaluate research rather than getting stuck in it and saying, oh, we are evidence-based, because for every research you find for something, the doctor can find one against it as well. And that then it becomes confusion. So always, if you're looking at research, do look at the numbers because they very quickly give you a picture. But if there is something that you feel more of a conflict in, you can still use the same pathway to say, let me see what are the inclusions of this research. Was this research of a double blind? Was it done with a comparison? Was it done in retrospective? Is it qualitative? Is it quantitative? There's so much more about research. And so find resources that actually decode research for you or your
In fact,
practitioner.
when you're talking about research, a lot of people consider just Googling research. So anything and everything available on Google is not research. So
Yeah,
let's just be very clear about it. So
yeah.
anything that you search on the internet is may not be true.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
see now how we derive inference from it. Oh God, my tongue just twisted all over that word. So let's talk about C-section rates. This is my personal favorite, right? We say, check your care provider's C-section rates, right? If you go to a midwife, a C-section rate may be 1 in like 300.
yeah,
Because if it's an independent midwife, she does a lot of careful evaluating of a woman's health before taking them on as a client. That's her scope of practice. So majority of low risk women who are never going to have a C-section anyways, unless something develops, with the kind of supportive input from the midwife, from the lack of fear and increase of education, will end up with a normal, healthy physiological birth. So it's not just the care of the midwife. It is, but it's not just that. It's also who they started with,
true.
right? If it is a high risk client, the midwife may want to collaborate with the doctor, and
Correct.
that's possible. And then some of those high risk may end up with C-section. So her C-section rate has now changed.
Right.
Go to a hospital. High risk women come to doctors. That's what they specialized in. So their C-section rates are high. When we just look at, like you said, when we Google C-section rate and we choose something, we are not looking at the whole picture. So logical mathematical intelligence tells us that we are capable of evaluating the number, not just the number, evaluating the number over and above what is apparent. And
Correct.
that would be because one of the fallouts of these rates and numbers in Google has become that women may not be considered, their choices may not be considered, their experience may not be considered to keep that number low. It may be great because lots of women have normal births there, that's what they wanted, but the few who needed your care, even not the, maybe not the intervention, but needed kindness, get lost in that system. When we build systems around what we can achieve, we forget people because the result matters. And that's where it's very important to evaluate care from understanding the practicality of that care rather than, so we talked about scope of work of doctors versus midwives, but also their numbers. To say that only good results will come with so and so, not for high risk women.
Correct.
Right? So again, it's not this or that. It's this and that, but I can evaluate. Evaluate comes from logical and rational. What works for me best, whether it's basis of my health conditions, whether it's basis of my personal fears, whether it's basis on my, how I want to do this with my family. There are some women who might give in to the pressure of their family as well because the family is fearful. It's still a choice that they may make. that, okay, now I can't fight this system. What can I get to help me? Or it sometimes it also leads to disruption of relationships because she feels unsupported. But when we put not just the mother or the woman center stage, when we put the baby and the mother together as a dyad center stage, we are able to evaluate our choices much better. That's just logical thinking. It has nothing to do with feelings. In fact, we might get caught with feelings of normal birth and ignore certain health issues that might need help that a certain care provider can give. No. And if that were to be happening under a home birth midwife's care, she would evaluate that risk much higher and transfer you.
Correct.
So please understand that your care providers have a certain kind of education and they are really good at what they do. If you want to buy spices in a coal depot, you're not going to get it. So if you want spices, go to the spice market. If you want coal, you go to coal depot. But that evaluation only you can do. You can't do it because coal depot is closer. So let's get it there. And finally, and most important, logical, mathematical is about decision making. At some point, you have to find that middle ground, or you have to find that tipping point of logical, mathematical, evidence says, and interpersonal, I feel. And then you come to that point and you're supported, you have a positive birth experience. So that's my bit for today.
That was a great ending. So, yeah, I think with each of these intelligences, it's kind of becoming, the picture is becoming clearer. And I think all the intelligences are kind of linked together. That's what I feel. So yeah, it'll be great if we could do like one complete
We would at the
picture
end.
of all the
The the big
intelligences.
picture of birth.
The big picture of birth, absolutely.
That could be the last one.
Yes, absolutely. So, thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our this topic as well. It was on logical, mathematical thinking, and this is one of the intelligences that we use every now and then, every time during birth, otherwise, in our life. So, but how we kind of relate it during birth, during our pregnancy is something we spoke about today. So, thank you so much for listening to us. Do write to us, how you liked it. Thank you for the hearts, Neha.
So
And
Tanvi's not saying any questions because it is her birthday and she's out for a holiday. So we're going to say bye-bye at this point.
yes, and as I said, I wouldn't have missed, Talking Tuesday for anything. So thank you, and yes, I'm on a holiday and I'm gonna enjoy now.
Have fun.
I posed a question too. Oh, we missed.
Oh.
Wait, Neha, I'm gonna go back. I'm so sorry, I missed your question. Okay, let me just go back, please. It was was it a question? It's going to be a simple one. Okay. Uh, Yeah. So Neha is saying it's basically as simple and we let it be.
Yes.
Neha, was there a question? Oh, okay. She's
She's
like,
just pulling your leg, I think.
okay, okay, okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Take care. See you next Tuesday now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.